Hello, knowledge seekers. In this episode of 20-Minute Books, we're exploring Alexander the Great by esteemed author Philip Freeman. Journey back to the era when Alexander the Great, a figure renowned for his unparalleled military strategies, set off from Greece at the tender age of 21. Over the next decade, he accomplished the extraordinary, conquering the vast Persian Empire and establishing the largest dominion the world had seen up to that point. More than just a conqueror, Alexander was a cultural pioneer, spreading Hellenistic influences across Eurasia, a legacy that shaped civilizations long after his demise. Philip Freeman, a professor of classics with a PhD from Harvard University, brings his scholarly expertise to vividly recount the intricate details of Alexander's campaigns and his lasting influence on world history. Freeman's narrative not only captures the grand scale of Alexander's achievements, but also provides deep insights into the strategic brilliance of this legendary commander. This book is a must-listen for anyone intrigued by the spread of Greek culture, enthusiasts of military history, and students eager to understand the impacts of one of history's most iconic leaders. Join us as we unfold the story of how Alexander the Great redefined the ancient world. Alexander the Great, the Macedonian who conquered the world. Introduction. Understanding the magnitude of Alexander the Great. It's a name that echoes through the annals of history. Alexander the Great. You've probably encountered his name in ancient history textbooks, seen his dramatized conquests in films, or perhaps discussed his strategies in a history class. But beyond the familiar name and legendary status, do you truly understand why Alexander remains one of the key figures in world history? By the time Alexander the Great breathed his last, he had amassed an empire larger than any seen before, a vast expanse that reached from the vibrant territories of Macedonia in Europe all the way to the enigmatic landscapes of Afghanistan. His achievements not only marked him as the quintessential conqueror, but also set a benchmark for the leaders who followed. Journey back to the ancient era that sculpted a king whose life was threaded with relentless pursuits and transformative encounters. From the pivotal Battle of Issus against the massive Persian armies, to his profound and culture-shifting experiences in Egypt. Amidst the backdrop of fierce combat, strategic brilliance, and unquenchable ambition, explore how Alexander's legacy is intricately linked to the widespread dissemination of Christianity, reshaping the religious and cultural contours of his vast empire. Join us in unraveling the tale of a ruler whose life saga continues to fascinate and inspire, Alexander the Great. Part 1. Alexander. A young prodigy in the Macedonian royal court, born in 356 BC, in the robust lands of Macedonia, Alexander was cradled into leadership from his very first breath, destined to imprint his name on the annals of history. His father, Philip II of Macedon, not only unified the fractious Greek city-states under one banner, but also demonstrated a remarkable foresight in recognizing and fostering his son's budding talents. These talents soon manifested in dramatic fashion. At just 13 years old, Alexander's destiny intersected with that of Bucephalus, a horse of unmatched majesty but known to be wildly untamable. When the horse dealer offered Bucephalus to Philip, the king hesitated due to the horse's fierce reputation. Yet it was young Alexander who saw an opportunity where others noticed just peril. After a fiery plea to his father, Alexander was presented with a challenge. If he could ride Bucephalus, the horse would be his. With a blend of youthful audacity and a sharp mind, Alexander deduced the horse's fear of its own shadow. Turning this fear into his advantage, he led Bucephalus into the sunlight, calming the beast enough to mount it, and, in doing so, won not only a legendary steed, but also his father's immense, albeit somewhat conflicted, admiration. Philip II's response to this feat: "My son, you must seek out a kingdom equal to yourself, Macedonia is not big enough for you, hinted at both pride and the faint stirrings of unease. As Alexander's reputation swelled, so did the rifts within the royal family. The young prince's escalating popularity soon cast a shadow over Philip's own standing, a situation that became untenable for the elder monarch. In a drastic series of family upheavals, Philip divorced Alexander's mother Olympias and remarried promptly, a political maneuver aimed at securing his reign. Yet he did extend an olive branch by inviting Alexander to the ensuing wedding festivities. However, harmony remained elusive. The wedding banquet, soaked in wine and festivity, turned sour when a toast hinting at the potential for new heirs ignited Alexander's fury, leading to an explosive confrontation that saw Philip embarrassingly incapacitated by his own inebriation. The fallout from this incident forced Alexander and Olympias to seek refuge in Epirus, though diplomatic efforts eventually paved the way for their return. Such episodes, laden with drama and intrigue, were but the early whispers of the legend Alexander was bound to become. Part 2. Alexander's decisive march towards the Persian Empire. The murder of Philip II thrust the young Alexander into a tumultuous ascent to power at the tender age of 20. His grip on the Macedonian throne was secured swiftly as he eliminated all rivals and charmed the Macedonian army with his compelling leadership and oratory skills. Yet, Alexander was not content with merely inheriting his father's legacy. He was determined to surpass it. Envisioning grand conquests, he set his sights on the Persian Empire, a realm that had long exerted influence and interference in Greek politics. Before he could embark on his eastern campaigns, Alexander needed to quell unrest within his own borders. The southern Greek city-states, particularly Thebes, bristled under his rule. Thebes's defiance peaked when its leaders openly labeled Alexander as a tyrant. In a ruthless display meant to deter any further dissent, Alexander razed Thebes to the ground, resulting in the deaths of 6,000 of its citizens. This devastating act sent a chilling message across Greece, effectively quashing any thoughts of rebellion among the other city-states. With his authority firmly established in Greece, Alexander turned his full attention towards the Persian conquest. In the spring of 334 BC, he led a formidable army out of Macedonia, eager to engage the vast Persian forces. His first significant encounter with the Persians occurred near the historical site of Troy, at the banks of the Granicus River that May. It was here that Alexander's strategic brilliance first shone on the battlefield. Despite the concerns of his seasoned general Parmenion about the risk posed by the river disrupting their formations, Alexander turned the geographical challenge into a tactical advantage. The battle commenced with the Persians initially appearing to dominate. However, Alexander's acute tactical response involved a dual cavalry assault, encircling the Persians from multiple directions. This maneuver not only disrupted the Persian lines, but also led to a significant morale boost for his troops when Alexander personally slew the Persian king's son-in-law. The tide of the battle swiftly turned, forcing the Persian forces into a hasty retreat. This victory at Granicus laid down a clear marker of Alexander's military ingenuity and heralded the beginning of his legendary status as one of history's greatest military commanders. Part 3. Alexander's rapid conquests across Asia Minor. Following his victory at Granicus, Alexander the Great displayed no intent to linger over celebrations. His military campaign pressed on aggressively as he captured strategic cities across Asia Minor, swiftly overrunning Sardis and Ephesus, and finally approaching the crucial city of Miletus, now part of southwestern Turkey. Miletus was not just another city. It served as a critical base for the Persian navy, making its capture essential to Alexander's broader strategic objectives. Initially, the city seemed poised to surrender without a fight, a welcome ease for Alexander's forces. However, the situation took a sharp turn with the imminent arrival of the Persian fleet, signaling that a confrontation was unavoidable. Once more, Alexander's military resolve was tested, and once again he chose to diverge from the counsel of his trusted general Parmenion. As they strategized their approach, an eagle landed on one of their ships, a sign Parmenion interpreted as divine support for a naval onslaught. However, Alexander, observing the eagle's landward orientation, opted to storm the city first. This decision proved astoundingly effective. Miletus fell before the Persian fleet could even anchor, exemplifying Alexander's knack for timely and decisive action. In the aftermath, Alexander took an unexpected strategic step by disbanding his own navy. As per the historian Arius, this move reflected a pragmatic recognition of the superiority of the Persian naval forces. Instead of engaging them directly, Alexander aimed to control the entire eastern Mediterranean coastline, effectively denying the Persian navy any operational harbors. Unyielding in his ambitions, Alexander pressed on through the harsh winter of 334 BC, continuing to amass victories and demonstrating his exceptional leadership in both strategy and morale. One particularly audacious capture was that of the port city of Telmessus. Here, Alexander employed a blend of cunning and surprise. With collusion from insiders within the city, he facilitated the entry of a group of female dancers into the city under the guise of entertainment for the Persian soldiers. The celebration led to lax security as the soldiers indulged heavily in drink. Seizing the moment, the dancers revealed themselves as Alexander's soldiers and subdued the drunken garrison, allowing Alexander's forces to take Telmessus without significant resistance. These episodes from Alexander's campaigns not only highlight his military genius and bold tactics, but also underscore his relentless pursuit of conquest and control over his expanding empire. Part 4. A crucial turn of events in Alexander's unyielding journey. As the spring of 333 BC unfurled, Alexander the Great, along with his relentless army, ventured deep into the heart of central Anatolia. It was here that Alexander encountered a pivotal challenge, not from the battlefield, but through the strategic movements of his adversaries. News reached Alexander that Memnon, a revered Persian general, was steering a powerful fleet towards southern Greece, potentially igniting an invasion. This development was particularly alarming as the memory of Persia's devastating raids a century earlier still haunted Greece. Moreover, the existing discontent with Macedonian rule meant that Memnon's campaign might find favorable conditions among the Greek populace. Faced with a critical decision, either to press forward with his conquests or return to safeguard his homeland, Alexander weighed his options. But fate intervened when Memnon suddenly passed away on the Greek island of Lesbos, his health having taken an abrupt downturn. This unforeseen event significantly shifted the strategic landscape, prompting Darius, the Persian emperor, to reconsider his plans. With his trusted general gone, Darius resolved to withdraw his forces and prepare for a direct confrontation with Alexander. However, Alexander's own fortunes were soon to be challenged. As his forces advanced into the harsh terrain of southern Turkey, the oppressive summer heat took its toll. In a moment of respite, Alexander, overwhelmed by the heat, plunged into the frigid waters of the Cydnus River. The sudden change in temperature led to a severe illness, casting a pall over his army, as many feared for his survival. In this dire situation, a trusted childhood acquaintance, Philip the doctor, stepped forward with a risky but potentially life-saving treatment. As preparations were underway, another twist emerged. Alexander received an ominous warning, suggesting that Philip might have been compromised by the Persians, potentially turning his medicine into poison. Confronted with a grave dilemma, Alexander chose to place his trust in Philip. He proceeded with the treatment, a decision that not only proved his resilience, but also his adept judgment. Miraculously, within days, Alexander recovered, revitalized, and ready to continue his monumental campaign. The series of events during this critical period not only underscored Alexander's tactical brilliance in warfare, but also highlighted his exceptional ability to navigate through intrigue, personal peril, and strategic challenges, further solidifying his reputation as one of history's most formidable leaders. Part 5. The pivotal confrontation at the Battle of Issus. In November of 333 BC, a young Alexander the Great, aged just 23, found himself on the brink of a monumental clash that would forever alter the course of history. Standing between his forces and the mighty Persian army, led by King Darius himself, was merely a modest Turkish mountain range. King Darius had strategized to engage Alexander on an expansive battlefield, aiming to leverage his cavalry's superior numbers to full effect. However, destiny carved a different path, drawing both formidable armies to the narrow confines near the Pinarus River for what would become the legendary Battle of Issus. As the battle commenced, Alexander's troops initially faced setbacks, pushed back by the overwhelming Persian force. Yet, amidst the chaos, Alexander orchestrated a fierce counterattack. The turning point came when his right wing successfully breached the Persian lines, allowing him to launch a strategic offensive on Darius's rear guard. This tactical maneuver shifted the battle's momentum decisively. With Alexander pressing attacks from multiple fronts, the cohesion of the Persian army faltered, leading to its gradual disintegration. Amidst the turmoil, a moment of intense personal confrontation unfolded as Alexander and Darius locked eyes across the battlefield. In a bid to capture Darius, Alexander charged forward, a dramatic encounter immortalized in a renowned mosaic now residing in Pompeii. This artwork captures not just the ferocity, but the surprise on Darius's face, underscoring the unexpected turn of events. Despite the chaos, Darius managed a narrow escape, leaving behind a battlefield strewn with the casualties of war and his own family among the captives. In a display of unexpected chivalry, Alexander not only spared the lives of Darius's mother and son, but also assured them of his protection, promising to treat the young prince as his own. The aftermath of the battle saw Darius extending a peace treaty to Alexander, offering up all of Asia Minor and a substantial ransom for his family's release. It was a generous proposal, seemingly appealing to his general's pragmatism. However, Alexander, fueled by ambition and not content with partial conquest, revised the treaty disdainfully, removing any concessions and adding terms that mocked the Persian king. This altered document, presented to his advisors, encountered no opposition, convincing them of the necessity to continue their expansive campaign. Thus, empowered by both military success and strategic cunning, Alexander pressed on, setting his sights firmly on the conquest of the entirety of Persia. Part 6. A transformative sojourn in Egypt for Alexander the Great. Following his strategic victory at the Battle of Issus, Alexander the Great guided his forces along the eastern Mediterranean shoreline. After a year of travel, they reached Egypt, a land under intermittent Persian control for centuries. Welcomed rather than resisted, Alexander found the Egyptians eager for a change from Persian dominion. During his stay, Alexander was intent on establishing his role not just as a conqueror but as a benevolent ruler, committed to respecting and preserving the Egyptian way of life. His ambitions in Egypt extended beyond mere military conquest. He envisioned a cultural and governmental blend that would bind this ancient civilization more closely to Greece. One of his most enduring contributions was the decision to establish a city that would serve as a beacon of Hellenistic culture and power. Inspired by the architectural marvels such as the pyramids of Giza, Alexander planned the creation of a city on the Egyptian coast opposite the island of Pharos. This new city, which would bear his name, Alexandria, was envisioned as a major trade hub and a naval stronghold. The site selection for Alexandria came from a divine hint in a dream, where an elderly man guided him towards the island of Pharos. Upon awakening, Alexander was resolute about the city's location. However, an unexpected occurrence during the city's foundational ceremony, where swarms of birds devoured the barley marking the city's borders, initially troubled Alexander. Yet, his soothsayer, Aristander, interpreted this as an auspicious sign, prophesying that Alexandria would thrive and nourish many. Moreover, Alexander's time in Egypt was marked by a profound spiritual journey. He embarked on a perilous trek across the Sahara to seek wisdom from the oracle at the sanctuary of Ammon. This journey was driven by deep existential queries about his destiny and the larger significance of his conquests. At the oracle, Alexander sought confirmation of his divine role in shaping the world. The oracle's affirmative response not only strengthened his resolve, but also imbued his future endeavors with a sense of divine inevitability. This encounter significantly influenced his self-perception and strategies, reinforcing his belief in his destiny to change the course of history. Alexander's Egyptian expedition significantly deepened his strategic and philosophical outlook, contributing to his portrayal not merely as a military titan, but also as a visionary leader who sought to intertwine cultures and wisdoms across his vast empire. Part 7. The strategic masterstroke at the Battle of Gaugamela. Following his transformative experiences in Egypt, Alexander the Great resumed his conquests, setting his sights on the legendary city of Babylon. However, another formidable challenge awaited him as he crossed the Euphrates and Tigris rivers: a renewed confrontation with King Darius of Persia, who awaited at the plains of Gaugamela with a massive army. This confrontation was poised to become one of history's most significant battles. Despite the numerical superiority of Darius's forces, which now included the terrifying spectacle of Indian war elephants that Alexander had never encountered, the vast open battlefield seemed advantageous for the Persian cavalry. Yet, on the eve of what would be known as the Battle of Gaugamela, Alexander devised a daring strategy. His plan involved riding his cavalry parallel to the Persian front line to provoke Darius's forces into breaking their formation, thereby creating a tactical gap that Alexander could exploit by spearheading a direct charge through the center. This calculated risk turned the tide in favor of the Macedonians. As Alexander led the charge through the center of the Persian lines, heading straight for Darius, a critical moment unfolded. He received reports that his own lines had been breached, threatening his forces with severe losses. In a decisive move, Alexander chose to turn back from pursuing Darius to stabilize his flanks and secure victory over the Persian army, allowing Darius to flee yet again, but ensuring the Macedonian victory at Gaugamela. The path then cleared for Alexander and his army to march triumphantly towards Babylon. As they approached, they were met not by resistance, but by awe-inspiring sights and celebratory welcomes. Babylon's massive walls, which rose purportedly 300 feet tall, and its meticulously planned cityscape with hundreds of bronze gates, left an indelible mark on Alexander and his men. In stark contrast to previous cities, the reception in Babylon was overwhelmingly positive, with residents offering music, flowers, and gifts, relieved to be liberated from Persian dominion. Like in Egypt, the local populace viewed Alexander as a liberator rather than a conqueror. With Babylon under his control, Alexander's empire now spanned across 3 continents, weaving a diverse tapestry of myriad cultures and ethnicities, showcasing not only his military prowess, but also a unique ability to amalgamate various peoples under his expansive realm. The conquest of Babylon was not just a military victory, but a significant expansion of Alexander's influence and legacy. Part 8. The tumultuous conquest of Persepolis. From the monumental urban landscapes of Babylon, Alexander directed his expansive campaign into the formidable snow-capped mountains of Persia, leading to the Persian Gates, a crucial mountain pass and the gateway to the heart of the Persian Empire, Persepolis. At this narrow pass, the remnants of the Persian army sprung an ambush, delivering a significant blow to Alexander's forces. Undeterred and adaptive as ever, Alexander discovered an alternative, less-known path through the mountains. Under the veil of night, his troops maneuvered behind the Persian lines, effectively surrounding and neutralizing the enemy. With the path cleared, Alexander and his army marched towards Persepolis, the symbolic and administrative center of Persia. Upon arrival, the city capitulated, perhaps hoping for leniency. However, fueled by years of relentless warfare and the sight of their ultimate prize, Alexander's soldiers could not be restrained from plundering the city. While such destruction skewed from Alexander's usual character of measured governance, he stood back, realizing that any attempt to stop his victory-intoxicated men might incite mutiny. It was a pragmatic pause in his leadership, acknowledging the combustible morale of his war-weary army. Amid these tense moments, Alexander committed an act in Persepolis that has marred his legacy, an act of fiery devastation at the renowned palace of Persepolis. In a lapse of judgment, exacerbated by alcohol and goaded by an Athenian woman's suggestion, Alexander set the palace ablaze. This act was purportedly a symbol of revenge for the Persians' earlier destruction of Athens. Regret followed quickly as sobriety returned, but the damage was irreversible, marking a dark chapter in what was otherwise a campaign celebrated for its brilliance and strategy. This moment is often recalled uncomfortably in historical discourse, attributed simplistically to the influence of women and wine, echoing the ancient Greek narrative of Helen's role in the Trojan War. The aftermath of Persepolis left a sour aftertaste, but Alexander's resolve remained undeterred. He pivoted quickly to pursue Darius, who was now a prisoner under his own cousin Bessus, self-declared as the new king of Persia. However, in a final twist of fate, as Alexander closed in, Bessus assassinated Darius and fled the scene. This act of betrayal and murder saddened Alexander, who had, despite their enmity, come to regard Darius as a respected adversary. The passing of Darius not only marked the end of an opponent, but symbolized Alexander's uncontested ascendancy to the Persian throne, clothed in the complex tapestry of military triumph and moral ambiguity. Part 9. Alexander's relentless pursuit across the Hindu Kush to Bactria. The death of Darius, while celebrated by his troops as a victory, did not signal the end of warfare for Alexander. Instead, it marked a new phase of his empire building. Alexander now set his sights on Bessus, the betrayer of Darius, fueled both by a desire for justice and an insatiable drive to expand his dominion further into the east. Alexander's army, weary and longing for home, initially saw Darius's death as the culmination of their struggles. However, Alexander, with his charismatic leadership, delivered a stirring speech that rekindled their spirit and prepared them for the arduous journey ahead. His words not only rallied his troops, but also steeled them for one of their most challenging adventures yet, crossing the formidable Hindu Kush mountains during the harsh winter. The Hindu Kush, part of the Himalayan range, presented a daunting challenge, with its steep passes climbing to around 15,000 feet and pathways so narrow that soldiers had to march in single file. This perilous trek through snow-laden paths tested the limits of their endurance. Unbeknownst to Bessus, Alexander's audacity knew no bounds. The traitor, underestimating Alexander's resolve, had not positioned any troops to guard the pass's exit, a critical oversight. After 5 grueling days of navigating through the Hindu Kush, Alexander's army emerged into Bactria, a land that would soon witness the downfall of Bessus. In the summer of 329 BC, Alexander finally closed in on his quarry. The villagers, likely eager to curry favor with the formidable Macedonian leader, quickly handed Bessus over to Alexander's forces. Confronted with his captor, Bessus attempted to justify his treachery by claiming he believed Alexander would approve of his actions in assassinating Darius. This rationale was met with disdain and fury from Alexander, who had come to respect his former adversary. In response, Alexander subjected Bessus to a brutal punishment, flogging and torturing him before ultimately delivering him to Darius's family, who carried out his execution. This relentless pursuit not only demonstrated Alexander's unwavering commitment to his cause, but also his ruthless method of dispensing justice. It reinforced his image as a leader who, while often magnanimous, could also deliver severe retribution against betrayal and disloyalty. Through these actions, Alexander's legacy, as both a strategic genius and a ruthless conqueror, continued to unfold as he ventured deeper into the uncharted territories of India. Part 10. Alexander's ambition meets its limits at the Ganges. By the year 327 BC, Alexander the Great, along with his Macedonian army, had been campaigning far from their homeland for a relentless 7 years. During this period, Alexander had taken Roxane, a nobleman's daughter, as his wife, yet his thirst for conquest remained unquenched. His next target was India, a land he believed would cement his legacy as the king of the world. Upon reaching the Indian frontier, Alexander's entry was marked by both peace and misunderstanding. In Taxila, currently in modern-day Pakistan, he initially perceived the grand welcoming party, complete with large contingents of men and elephants, as a military threat. Fortunately, the king of Taxila, Omphis, quickly clarified that their intentions were hospitable, averting potential conflict. However, not all Indian kingdoms were as accommodating. At the kingdom of Pauravas, Alexander encountered stiff resistance from King Porus, leading to a fierce battle where Alexander's beloved horse Bucephalus met his end. In tribute to Bucephalus, Alexander founded a city near the battlefield, naming it after his faithful companion. Yet, as challenging as the physical battles were, a more daunting obstacle was emerging within the ranks of his own army. Upon reaching the banks of the Ganges, it became clear that the spirit of his troops was flagging. For the first time, Alexander's rousing oratory failed to ignite their martial zeal. This sentiment was crystallized by one of his generals, who, in a poignant address, reflected the soldiers' deep longing to return to their families and their homeland after years of continuous warfare. The general's speech resonated deeply with the troops, culminating in enthusiastic cheers. He proposed that Alexander consider returning to Macedon to muster a fresh army for any future campaigns. Contemplating the welfare of his weary army and the logistical challenges of further expansion, Alexander was confronted with a tough decision. After several days of contemplation, he concurred with his general's counsel. Alexander's decision to turn back marked a significant moment in his campaign, a recognition of his and his army's limits. This pivotal turnaround after 7 arduous years of conquest underscored the complexities of leadership and the burdens of an unrelenting quest for glory. Alexander's journey back home was not just a physical retreat, but a strategic recalibration, reflecting his adaptability and prudent judgment in the face of unprecedented challenges. Part 11. The untimely end of Alexander the Great. After a decade of relentless campaigning that expanded his empire to unprecedented bounds, Alexander the Great's return journey to Macedonia was as eventful as his conquests, though fraught with peril, from near drownings in river rapids to a harrowing passage through the Gedrosian desert. Yet, even as the landscape of his empire stretched to vast horizons, Alexander's ambitions soared even higher. En route back to his homeland, Alexander was already plotting further expansions. His vision extended to the Arabian and North African coastlines, dreaming of a continuous dominion from Egypt to the western edges of the Mediterranean. Moreover, his strategic gaze had also turned towards Europe, where he began considering responses to emerging threats from a relatively obscure tribe known as the Romans. However, destiny had other plans. Only 3 years after his departure from India, ominous signs began to manifest. As he approached Babylon, a group of Chaldean priests urgently cautioned him against entering the city, especially not towards the west in the light of the setting sun, a potent symbol of demise in their culture. Alexander, ever the skeptic of superstitions and external advisories, dismissed their warnings. Yet, upon his entry into Babylon, a series of ill omens seemed to haunt his steps. A casual sailing trip turned eerie when the wind swept away his crown. More disturbingly, he discovered upon his return to his palace that an ex-convict had audaciously seated himself upon his throne, donning his royal crown. The culmination of these foreboding signs came after a night of excessive celebration, following which Alexander fell severely ill. As his condition deteriorated, the invincible conqueror faced the ultimate vulnerability of his mortality. Surrounded by his anxious companions as they inquired into the succession of his vast empire, Alexander's final words resonated with the indomitable spirit of a warrior. "To the strongest." These words, uttered on the brink of death, encapsulated his life's philosophy of power and prowess, but also heralded a forthcoming era of confusion and conflict among his generals, each interpreting his directive as a personal call to arms. Alexander's death thus marked not only the end of an extraordinary life, but also set the stage for the tumultuous divisions of his empire, forever changing the course of history. Part 12. The enduring impact of Alexander the Great's conquests. Alexander the Great's decade-long military campaign fundamentally reshaped the cultural and political landscapes of Eurasia, imprinting Greek cultural norms far beyond the traditional boundaries of the Hellenic world. His influence persisted long after his empire crumbled following his premature death. The regions of Persia and India, in particular, underwent significant transformations as a result of Alexander's campaigns. In the wake of his conquests, a succession of Greco-Indian kingdoms emerged, blending Hellenistic and local Indian traditions. This cultural synthesis notably altered Indian art and architecture, evidenced by the introduction of Buddha statues in human form, modeled after Greek representations of Apollo. Although many in Persia initially reviled him, Alexander's philosophical demeanor left a lasting mark. Interestingly, in Islamic tradition, he is remembered as a philosopher king, a figure of mighty deeds and wise governance, as noted in the Quran. His philosophical legacy seeded the ground for continued intellectual engagement in the region, influencing the perspectives and religious philosophy of the subsequent Islamic Golden Age. However, perhaps the most profound legacy of Alexander was felt in a region he never set foot in: Rome. As the burgeoning Roman Empire sought cultural and intellectual identity, it heavily leaned on Greek influences. Greek became the elite language of Roman intellectual discourse, and Roman art and architecture drew heavily from Hellenistic models. Furthermore, the propagation of Christianity was significantly aided by the widespread use of Greek across the Mediterranean, a direct consequence of Alexander's quests. The Gospels were initially penned in Greek, affording Christianity a linguistic platform to reach a wide audience. This facilitated the rapid spread of Christianity throughout the Roman Empire and beyond, an expansion that might not have occurred had Alexander not propagated Greek as a lingua franca across his territories. Alexander's military exploits, such as those emulated by historical figures like Julius Caesar, Augustus, and Napoleon, underscore his status as a military icon whose strategic brilliance set the high watermark for empire building. Despite these attempts at emulation, none succeeded in surpassing the sheer expanse of Alexander's empire, making his legacy not only a testament to his own era, but a continued point of reference for leaders throughout history. Final summary: Alexander the Great stands as one of history's most formidable military leaders, having expanded a modest Macedonian kingdom into a vast empire that stretched from Greece to the far reaches of India. His remarkable ability to blend astute military strategies with nuanced political tactics enabled him not only to conquer, but also to govern diverse cultures across a sprawling domain. His legacy, as the architect of the largest empire the ancient world had ever witnessed, continues to be studied and admired for its strategic brilliance and transformative impact on the subsequent course of history. Thank you for joining me today on this journey of learning and discovery as we explored the insights of another thought-provoking book in our growing library of knowledge. If you've enjoyed our time together, please take a moment to follow our podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and share 20-minute books with other knowledge seekers. Your support truly means a lot. Don't forget to join me again in the next episode, where we will delve into another enriching book. Until then, happy reading and happy listening.